Good evening, everyone. Every time we every time we are here in this building, it's this feeling of nostalgia when you come to the Taj Mahal Hotel. While all of us love to take the clock back and talk about the famous history of this hotel, we always do that when we enter the lobby. But today we want to take the clock forward and talk about the wonderful commitment towards Pathya. And just read the punchline once again. If you get the punchline once again of Pathya, awareness, joy. These are the wonder words, trust. And I think that is what the ESG messaging is all about. So I'm going to start with Mr. Sinha. And Mr. Sinha, power companies in ESG, somehow the connection is always that power companies use coal. They are not responsible corporate citizens. The power companies in India have a very bad reputation when it comes to ESG. Is that true?
Thank you, Nikunj. And first of all, thank you to Puneet and the IHCL team for inviting me. Compliments for the first anniversary celebration of Pathya. And I've been closely involved with this, and it's amazing work that is being done by IHCL team, and Tata Power works very closely with IHCL in this initiative. I think the world is changing. There was a world in which we had the fossil fuel, and there was a world where it was gas. And this was what was discovered more than 100 years back. Thomas Alva Edison found electricity, and that's the way the world produced electricity for last 100 years. But I think in last 20 years, it has transformed. And the transformation is towards decarbonization. And when we talk of decarbonization, it's not only electricity, but also very many other areas where you can decarbonize. And it is also about decentralization. And I think the type of changes that it is happening globally, it is happening in our country and also in Tata Power. I think we are blessed because we have a unique opportunity to leapfrog and move to an area where we can actually make a difference in the lives of people. And this has become very much relevant now. I do know that there is always a talk whether we have to phase down or phase out coal. This is a topic which gets discussed. There's also a topic which gets discussed that we did not pollute. It was the developed countries that have polluted for last so many years. There's a price. But I think we need to get out of that mindset because there is an opportunity and we can really leapfrog. We don't have to go the way that many of the other countries had to go through the development program. So I think we have a solution, and many of the things that we are today doing will ensure that we will have 100% renewable energy in times to come. It is not going to happen tomorrow or day after tomorrow, but there is a transition plan. And I think some of the areas where the work was happening was a little slow, will pick up pace. And I personally feel that the type of initiative, the type of technology development, the type of research that is happening globally will be able to move. So it may be there for some more time, but I don't think it is going to be there for a very long period of time that you will continue to use coal or brown fuel. You will move towards green fuel. It will become a necessity. We heard Mr. Pokhriyal talking about 32%. I feel that we have missed the balance 68%. We need to do that. And I think we'll feel very proud one day when we stand over here and say that all IHCL hotels get 100% clean power, and that will happen.
Fantastic. So that's a very encouraging note, Mr. Sinha, to start the discussion with. But I have a follow-up question for you. As India will grow, our energy needs will grow. As the energy need of India will grow, how different do you think would be India's transition for higher energy demand? How different it could be, considering that there is a lot which we've learned from the mistakes of developed countries?
So I mentioned to you that the decarbonization and decentralization. I think the decentralization part is something unique, where you can generate this electricity in local areas, and that can be urban areas, that can be rural area. So just for example, we have in India more than 600,000 villages, and there's no need that you set up large coal-based plants and transmit thousands of kilometers of electricity to reach to those villages. You can straight away generate over there and use over there, and you can create economic activity thereof. Similarly, you have solar pumps, and you have pumps, and very few of them are solar pumps. So why can't we move away? In fact, in India, we have something like 3 crore pump sets, and only about 3 lakh are solarized. Why can't we convert all of them into solar pumps? We can have people in industries, in commercial establishments, in their homes, they can generate. So I think the technology today is coming. There was a cost barrier that is getting eliminated. Today it is much cheaper to produce from some of the green sources. The challenge is intermittent. This is the intermittent power, and how do you make it more reliable? How do you make it more resilient? Some of the new technologies where the work is going on will make it. So I think there is a lot of hope now, and the way people are moving, it's a matter of time. While countries have talked about 2035 as net zero, 2070, 2050, I think it will happen much faster.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think the entire India ESG story stands now, or the attempt which started a couple of years ago? What do you think has been the success?
So first of all, I must thank you to put me on the spot here between two stalwarts. But I'd really like to compliment the Indian hotels on the first year of Pathya. Each time I stay, I was wondering what these bottles really signify. I mean, I know they're bottled drinking water, but later on I had to do some research and find out what Pathya stands for. So on a scale of 1 to 10, personally, I'd say we are at about 3 or 4. And I'm deliberately not sounding very, very bullish or positive, because this is just the beginning, what we are seeing. This is just the tip. The arena is fairly wide where we have to operate. Our growth aspirations for India itself, if you see by the 100th year of independence, we have aspirations of touching 25 trillion, which means there's going to be a huge, huge demand on energy. We already have a legacy and some catching up to do on the social aspects. Governance, you could say we are better off, but overall, all put together, pooled in, there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done. And it's not just a regulatory switch on, switch off. It's a mindset issue. It's a society issue. It's an approach to the full thing. Fortunately, we are on track. We've embraced it, and over the next 5 or 10 years, we'll see some quick action. And I think by then the rating should be 6 or 7.
But can India afford such stringent ESG standard, given that 2022 was an eye-opener for all of us in terms of energy needs, food security, and that's the time a lot of ESG standards were compromised. Also, this good old debate between what is happening to Bangladesh and Vietnam. Some of those countries are not following ESG standards in totality, but guess what? They're also globally competitive.
So I would reverse it to say, can India afford not to? The world is moving on. If you see in the US, the Europe, it's very, very different from developing countries. And nothing's going to stop them from coming out with their regulations. Nothing's going to stop them from coming out with their penalties, if you like, indirectly. Now, India can choose to grow in a different manner, but you can't de-link it beyond a certain point. And one of the critical components is our youth, our children, our Gen X. They are the ones who are also deciding for themselves. So you've seen it in corporates, where if they don't see a move from from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, then they choose to work in different organizations. So you have to recognize those. These are the softer aspects which you have to recognize when you go down this journey.
Mr. Chatwal, firstly, congratulations on 1 year of Pathya. I mean, I've had the pleasure of tracking the journey of Pathya and a lot of ESG initiatives of Indian hotels, and some of them are really exemplary, which are having impact both at an environment level and at a social level. But frankly, if you have to assess the ESG journey of Indian hotels on a scale of 1 to 10, 3, 4, 5 on nearing 10.
I would say that where Yazdi just mentioned, India would be, we're already there today. There is much more that needs to be done. But we also have a benefit. We are celebrating 120 years of the company this year. So we are way ahead. Also, the founder's philosophy, as was mentioned, was all built around the community as being the most important stakeholder. So that is deeply ingrained in the DNA of all group companies. So that's another help. But coming to, what GSD just now said, I actually have a different opinion. I think we are not doing that bad if you actually looked at data. So India is a little less than 20% of the world population. And the kind of emissions we have is far less than, let's say, the European Union put together. So, but is the less bad the new good? That's not right. However, what makes me believe that India can do it is the horrible time that we went through COVID. I think we managed as a nation, we managed that situation possibly the best in the world or among one of the best. I think with digitization, the way it was leveraged during COVID, and some of the alignment among people for a common cause, if that would happen, then the say-do ratio of ESG plus would significantly increase, and the time to achieve those goals will be much shorter than what we think. And as Indian hotels also, I have to say I learned one lesson during the COVID times. We were doing what we were doing was very normal for the group that you do social service and you host frontline workers and you do the meal service, etc. But the amount of good that came back, I have not seen that in my almost 4 decades of career before. So I think there is this one thing which is also in the Indian mythology, that, or in the Indian culture, and we say if you do good, it comes back to you. I think it doesn't only come back to you, it comes back to you tenfold. So it may not be true in other economies and other places in the world, which is a negative for them, because there is always a system that takes care of you. Here, you need people who actually volunteer, organizations that volunteer, take charge, and that is also making a big difference. So I think that I'm a bit more optimistic that this has to happen, and I think it's another big opportunity. The biggest opportunity after G20, I would say, is embarking on this journey.
What's the kind of pushback you get from boardrooms when you are discussing ESG strategies? Is it cost? Is it lack of awareness? Or it is, sometimes in Hindi we say, chalta hai attitude?
So first of all, I can relate to Puneet's comment about what goes around, comes around.
In what way?
Today he's blessed with a fabulous auditor.
But auditors change every 5 years. That's a rotation law.
To answer your question on the boardroom front, we conducted a survey globally sometime last year, and one of the starking observations that came out, and this is when there's a huge talk of recession. We don't talk about recession as much right now, but 6 months ago we were talking about it. Globally, people were were assuming they'd be impacted more than India and things like that. And one of the things that came about was the ESG spend. That's going to suffer because of a perceived recession. So in some ways that answers the element of, do we have the ability to stay the course for the medium term, for the long term, or in a recessionary kind of scene, we are immediately looking at other aspects. So that is one. And second is a bit of tick the box. So as a country, as a nation, our approach is established. There's no turning around. There's no looking away from it. As a regulation, we are fairly proactive. SEBI is proactive, and it's already come out with their requirements of the BRSR, etc. And standards are there. It's all evolving, and the philosophy is right now around disclosure. So whether it's integrated reporting or not, it's around disclosure. So when you go out and disclose what you've done, what you have to do, what you will do, that's your first step, and you start committing yourself as an industry or a corporate. So I think there we are fairly ahead. A lot of voluntary disclosure coming through with a small element of tick the box. But that tick the box cannot really last very long because you've put it out already. So that's the scenario where we are today.
So if I break the ESG into three parts, the E, the S, and the G, would you say that in the environment side, we have a long way to catch up? When it comes to the social responsibility, we are catching up. But on the governance standard, India is right up there?
So I'd agree on the governance front. We've achieved the maturity that we want, and we are fairly agile as well. Whether it's voluntary, whether it's approach, whether it's regulation. The tricky one for us, I would say, is the S. The environment piece also, almost a lot of corporates have gone out and put out a net zero, including firms like ours, KPMG, who's got out and said that by 2030 we'll be net zero. But it's the S which is the most difficult, to my mind.
Mr. Chatwal, do you agree with that? It's really the social part which needs to be addressed, and especially looking at the kind of workforce you have, a large blend of women employees are there. So that is something which needs to be addressed.
I actually think the E is more difficult to address. The S is being addressed, and very efficiently, especially with the current government, whatever measures they've been taking. And also, we are fairly blessed to have a young population, so and it's going to achieve its optimal level is between 2040 and 2050. So I think there we are very blessed to get younger people into workforce and out of that as challenges. But the E is a problem, and the E is a problem. Look at the two most important cities, if I would like, for the lack of a better example. Let's take the national capital and this year what Mumbai went through. Do we have a real answer to the situation, or are we still dependent on the way the wind will be blowing over the Arabian Sea and in what direction it will push the dust away and the dust factor on the Mumbai roads? I think that's a challenge, because as a fast growing economy, majority of our key metros and others will be a construction site, whether it's a coastal road being built or an airport being built or a train station being, redeveloped. So there is a lot happening and will continue to happen, and there is consensus around it. But what it brings with it, how are we going to address that? That I think we need a scientific solution to it. So then the will to make the difference will come. So yes, S is important, but that you have a way around it. But how do you compromise growth, or how do you have sustainable, responsible growth and improve the quality? The other day, Praveer studied also in Chandigarh. I remember somebody made a comment, I wish we had planned 30 or 50 Chandigarhs in India, and then life would have been easier had we done that 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I think for me, E is a bigger challenge.
Mr. Sinha, when it comes to pollution and when it comes to power and coal, everybody surprisingly in Bombay looks up to you. Pollution है तो टाटा पावर का प्लांट है, पावर प्रॉब्लम है टाटा पावर का प्रॉब्लम है. ये क्यों होता है ऐसा हमेशा?
और पावर नहीं है तब
अडानी भी पावर बनाता है.
So I can do that also. Then you will remember me more than yes, candlelight dinners will become a norm. But
Raj has a facility, they give candlelight dinners.
so I think what we need to do is you need to invest in technology. And let me tell you that though we have a plant in Mumbai, right, in Mumbai city, it's a very unique plant. It had a FGD way back in 1985-87. Today, people in the country are talking of the flue gas desulfurization. So it was done way back in 85-88, and that is operating, and that's why it is able to control. Also, I think the type of coal that we use, you would not get anywhere else in the world. We get from a coal mine in Indonesia.
So, but the price you charge is nowhere else in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Reliability has a cost. So that's why I'm saying that if you do not get reliable power, then what is the alternative? You will use a diesel generating set, which is 3 times the price of what you...
Yes, see, when I met the CEO of L&T, he said construction does not cause pollution, it's the power company who causes pollution. When I speak the power company, they say, no. When I meet an auto company, they say, no, we don't cause any kind of pollution. Now a consultant has a view on everything. So what's... So India has, unfortunately, sad but true, some of the most polluted cities in the world. And it's getting dangerous now. The levels in Delhi, Bombay, this year in Mumbai, it's always in Delhi. What is the solution inside? You know, it's great to talk about $5 trillion moving towards $10 trillion, but this kind of a pollution level in cities is hazardous. It's a medical crisis. If I'm not using a scary term here, but it's a medical crisis. Let me hear your view. How can that be solved?
So it's not just, when you say pollution, it's not just air pollution, which we are referring to when we talk about power and things like that. There are lots of other dimensions of pollution, which in some ways I would say is also eroding our heritage. So we've got cities which are more than 100 years old, which if you go to a European city which is 100 years old, it's very different from this city. And that's because of the way we've treated it and polluted it year on year. To my mind, only regulation can change this. It's a costly affair. If you recall, maybe about 5 or 7 or maybe 7 years ago, China had the same problem of pollution, and this was the air pollution, where the quality index of Shanghai and Beijing was continuously highlighted. And they took whatever action they had to, and they could do it financially. And they managed to turn it around in a manner where, and demonstrate that if you're at it, then it is achievable. We are in a similar situation. As Praveer mentioned, construction happens everywhere you go. But you don't see so much of pollution and things like that.
Let's get closing comments. I mean, the consultant should have the last word.
To my mind, we are at an inflection point, and we have a very, very good position vis-a-vis the rest of the world.
And gentlemen, thank you for your time. Mr. Sinha, Yazdi, Mr. Chatwal, thank you very much.